Welcome to Let's Talk Data, a podcast for IT professionals by IT professionals. After the passing of Kevin Mitnick, in this episode we're going to be discussing social engineering after he popularized the term back in 1995, and to discuss how this form of attack has changed and how it's impacting us today. Let's Talk Data is brought to you by Proact and NetApp, and your hosts today are myself, Tony Gent, Lisa Marie Innan, and Christian Lehrer.
So I went to the news last week and I sadly read that Kevin Mitnick, one of the most famous hackers in history of cybersecurity, died on July 16th at the age of 59. And one of his big topics was the social engineering part. So he famously called it a human firewall, basically, and said that it needs to be stronger. And I think he talked about it or started talking about it in 1995. At least that's what I read in an article. And I think it's still as important today as it was then. Maybe it has changed a little bit, but I think the awareness for social engineering is not always there, and it needs to go up. And we have a lot of conversations about software and hardware measures to secure our data. But the people are as crucial, if even not more crucial, than all the other measures.
It's interesting, isn't it? The thing that can surprise me about that is, and I have a friend who was really interested in Kevin from years ago and read his books and other elements like that. And it's not about computers at all. He's a hacker. He's called a hacker, but actually a lot of the things that he's famous for have nothing to do with computers. They're just to do with how he interacted with other people. There are elements like where you even today we have this element whereby you don't let someone else follow you into your office, but still the physical access to a network port puts somebody directly onto your network. But so you can literally come in dressed as a plumber, flag your way into the building and get access to somebody's network, which we don't tend to think of so much, or I don't think of so much these days. I still tend to think of hacking being related to a guy sitting with a cowl on, from Anonymous, having a go at somebody's firewall. So it's a bizarre situation.
And I also read his book or listened to it as an audiobook, and I really can recommend it. It's a fun read. It's also pretty impressive what he did and what I think he went to jail even for hacking and stuff. Lisa, I don't know if you have any insights on that, but it's really, really interesting to see how he did it and which easy ways he found to jump into the FBI network, for example. It's the FBI. So yeah, pretty interesting. And I think
was it like Mission Impossible, that sort of stuff? Was he coming in from the ceiling and sort of on cables?
At least not in his book. Maybe that's what he did in real life, but I would assume that he would have written that down.
Doing his own Tom Cruise impression.
He was, among other things, arrested for stealing about $1 million in proprietary software. So that was what he was arrested for. I think a few years later, he was arrested again. And that's in his book, Ghost in the Wires, My Adventures as the World's Most Famous Hacker.
He made hacking cool, I guess. Yeah, because hacking, I suppose, still has that sort of kudos attached to it, bizarrely, doesn't it? We think of hackers as being cool people, which is a bit weird. We don't tend to think of burglars as being cool people, and yet hackers, for some reason, have a bit of kudos about them, which is a bit unusual.
Mitnick even said in one of his interviews that he feels like when he started doing it, basically, it was more of a curiosity thing. Seen as a curiosity thing than seen as someone being a criminal trying to do that stuff. So I think there was also quite an interesting insight to see maybe how the reputation has changed there.
I don't see hackers as the good guys anymore, at least not hackers in that kind of definition, because we have to work with them or against them every day. And I would love some more Kevin Mitnicks in this space of more curiosity, not doing so much bad stuff.
Something else that was always sort of stood out is, generally speaking, I think it's fair to say that IT guys, certainly very good IT guys, tend to be of a certain sort of breed, whereby they're very focused, very individual, very good at technology, not necessarily the best at people, if that makes sense. And yet a lot of his techniques are about the manipulation of people. And I read somewhere that this is primarily because his dad used to be a salesman. So he's sort of inherited this sort of salesman sort of bravado and the ability to talk to people from his parents. So he's like an amalgam of an intelligent hacker, but also a really good people person at the same time.
I think this is still valid for most of the good social engineers. They have to understand how people are working, how people are thinking, what kind of possibilities are there to find them in a situation that is not typical, to press them to do something a little bit more quicker than normal. Or I don't know, I heard a story, Lisa, I think you might have even told me that you read something where a baby in the back was crying during a test and it helped getting the password easier or something. Maybe you can share a little bit about that.
So I think it was a video I saw a longer time ago where a woman tried to get a password, and she called the company she wanted to get that password from and pretended to be the wife of the person, the password she needed, or that she needed to be resetted. And she played baby crying in the background just to simulate a little bit more distress, and also use these emotions like, in this case, the desire to help of people to basically get what she wants, but also like curiosity or trust in maybe like doctors or anything, or institutions in general is also a thing that happens quite often. I mean, that you get calls or something in the name of the FBI or an institution you think is quite important, and you want to follow and you want to comply. And that's another emotion they like to use.
And I think they are playing a lot, at least we have it here a lot, where this grandparent scam is coming in, where the grandson or the granddaughter is in jail and needs a lot of money suddenly to be bailed out or whatever. And I read a story where one grandmother said, "Oh, no, you don't get any money from me. I watched the news and I saw that this is a problem." Turns out it really was her grandson who needed help this time. But she acted the correct way. She informed police and got everything sorted out. But oftentimes you hear and listen to bad stories about people losing tens of thousands of dollars or euros or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Even my own parents have fallen victim to sort of not wildly destructive, but going to the wrong webpage off Facebook that imitates a ransomware attack rather than actually performing a ransomware attack and that sort of thing. So I've tried to drill it into them that no, don't call the number on the screen, but they have managed it at least once. But there you go.
Yeah, another thing is the typical lawyer email, where there's an Excel file with the horrible thing you have done. And that's also something I get called about from my grandma or something. She's like, "I got an email from my lawyer." And I was like, "Nope, if it's a lawyer, you didn't get an email. You would have gotten a letter." So that's another thing that happens quite a lot.
I think the other thing with social engineering, though, obviously it started off really being about the manipulation of people, maybe face to face or over the telephone. But I didn't really associate this with it. But if you look at social engineering examples, phishing is a very valid method of social engineering, and I didn't necessarily think that they were the same. But I remember when the I Love You virus or the Love Letter virus came out back in 2000. And I remember sort of fighting against that with the tools that I had available at the time. But I didn't consider it at that point to be a method of social engineering. But actually it is. It's the way that the letter is written, the way that they're enticing the customer to be able to click on the file. All this sort of manipulation is also classed as social engineering, which I find quite interesting. Yeah,
and it's also quite interesting who they address with what they're doing. I mean, there are sometimes they directly addressing a CFO or something because they have the rights to transfer money. But also there are cases in which very, very new colleagues are targeted, like also young students that are working in the company that now get contacted from their CEO that they don't even know, so they can't really validate, is it right or is it wrong? And they go out and buy Apple Store cards for hundreds of dollars or euros. And just because they want to comply, and if the CEO says so, I have to do so. And they don't even question where that maybe come from. And if you're lucky, another colleague is saying like, that doesn't sound right. But if you're not lucky, then the codes get transferred, and that way they get their money.
Yeah, this is really a big problem. That CEO fraud, that's a special term for it. When you go in there have been really millions of losses because of that. There was one company in Nuremberg, I think, they lost 30 million euros due to that. Wow. So again, human firewall. If the humans don't see that this might be something strange in here, it's really, really hard. But you also have to see that the attackers are getting better and better. So it's kind of I don't know how you say in English, the arms race. I think maybe might be the right term for it. One gets here, the other one gets here, and it's really like this all the time. So having a good understanding and so-called awareness for the users is really, really important. But I think that's also changing since everything has been changing into getting more complicated.
Does this mean that actually, from a point of view of our firewalls and our security, that it's becoming less about the computer and more about the person?
I think it's a combination of both, because there are a lot of security measures that can be implemented on the technical side, but it's not everything. We have always to be curious about things that we see.
Yeah, and I think phishing, for example, is quite a prominent topic. So I feel like email security with the people get better. They are more asking, okay, is that really legitimate? But I feel like, for example, calls, it's not so present that a call could be an attacker as well. Like email is something everyone has heard about or seen, but you don't have test calls where someone trying to get the password, at least not as often as the typical testing phishing mail you get.
And also on the phone, it's often not directly asking about the password. It's more getting information about the company. So you're getting a call. I try to reach Lisa Marie, but it seems I have the wrong extension number. Can you give me the right one, please? Stuff like that. That's also social engineering, where the people are gathering more and more information about your company to then spin up a more realistic scenario. Like, hey, Tony, Lisa Marie told me she has got a new extension number and she told Christian that blah, blah, blah. So when people get more and more information about your company, they can then way easier spin up that story that sounds more realistic when they do their spear phishing attacks. Yeah. So that's why it's so important to really always have open eyes and ears on that.
We have, I know from experience that there's a lot of attacking on account systems and on accounts staff, whereby people are ringing up, knowing the name of the, or claiming to be from a given company, having the company name, having everything that they need to about the invoice that they've been issued, but sort of saying, oh yeah, but you need to put it into a different account, please. You know, that sort of stuff. Our accounts details have changed. We're changing bank, like X, Y, Z. And then essentially leaving that with the administration team to be able to sort, but also blocking off any emails coming from the company that's being attacked at the same time. So they will intercept emails coming into that company so that they can make sure that nobody is actually telling the company that this is going on. And it really makes it very difficult for the company that's under attack to understand they're under attack. They're literally completely removed from that equation. Yeah. But again, it's really down to tight control over, changing of this information for any business.
I don't know if you know Linus Tech Tips. He had quite a similar example. So he's a very big tech YouTuber, and he had a man in the middle, basically. And they got into the conversation, blocked the real mails of the person, and I think they lost 100,000 euros. They got it back eventually, but like they completely took over also the way they were talking, because it was a company run by a family. And when the son answered, he always said, okay, I have to check back with my dad, but I will give you an answer soon. And they used similar phrases so that it completely looked like it came from them. And I mean, a famous tech YouTuber, I think it's a lot more focused on this kind of things. And he said, I was completely clueless. I'm checking so many things, but they did so many things right. And the writing style was completely the same. And I just make it public to show how good these people get, just to inform the public, basically.
Are we then, this is interesting, isn't it? Are we going to get to the stage whereby the moment we have social engineers who are hackers that are specifically aimed at doing this task, are we going to end up with a situation whereby we don't need the social engineers anymore because of the fact that we can let computers, AIs, things of that nature do it for us? Because they can send text messages, they can imitate other people, they can even do voices, and these days probably can even do deep fakes. Are we going to end up with a situation where social engineers are almost out of a job because of the fact that AI is going to replace that process and can be done on a much wider scale?
I mean, if the AI doesn't have to walk through the door, that's a different kind of social engineering. I think this will take a little bit more time. But yeah, I think AI is a very big factor. And also it shows that security awareness is reaching its limits. I mean, it gets so much better that, I mean, if the Nigerian prince is sending you an email, your brain is saying, I probably don't get €1 million if I send him 1,000 euros. But with AI and the better and better mails and all of that, there's just so much you can train for people to check to keep it usable, basically, because they cannot open every mail and spend 15 minutes on checking all the parameters to make sure it's legit.
And even that wouldn't help in all of the cases, because sometimes companies are being hacked and used as the gateway to different companies. So even if they check everything for legitimacy, it might still be a spear phishing or social engineering attack. So it's really, really getting hard. And that's, Tony, what you asked before. Should we focus more on the humans? I think it's really still both. It's techniques, using also maybe AI to see what kind of uncommon behavior a user is doing, to see, okay, now that's strange. Tony is supposed to only transfer 30,000 euros per balance check, but now he's suddenly transferring 100,000. What's happening there? To raise an alert there or something in that direction. Or I don't know, Christian is suddenly checking for a file server that he never has touched before. Why is that? And combine that with the human awareness and raise alerts, and then get security people check, hey, Christian, did you really do that? And why did you do that suddenly? Because you never touched that file server, for example.
Yeah, no, I think at the end of the day, certainly it seems to me that knowledge is going to be the key driver moving forward. Knowledge for all of our employees, knowledge for all of our staff members, to make sure that they're wide awake when it comes to sort of receiving emails, when it comes to receiving phone calls, when it comes to receiving, social media posts, because it's still seems like a huge hole, and one that's getting slightly bigger rather than getting smaller at this point.
And I also feel like you have to tell people that it's not a problem if they have a false alarm, because sometimes I feel like people can get ashamed to hand something in that maybe is just legitimate, and just tell them, hey, rather hand one more in than if you're having a strange feeling with it, don't feel embarrassed, just hand it in and we will check it for you. And we are very thankful that you use these processes in place.
So I suppose what I've got out of it certainly is the fact that social engineering changed a massive amount over the years. from literally being face-to-face to being far more email, spear phishing, and a wide range of other types of attack, man-in-the-middle attacks, just as Lisa mentioned. So, but I think it's, as a subject, is only getting bigger, and it means that from a knowledge perspective, we really have to make sure that we're teaching people. So, are there any topics you would like us to discuss in future episodes? If so, please just let us know. If you found this episode interesting, please subscribe. Let's Talk Data is brought to you by Prior and NetApp. Thanks for listening.